Hello viewers, I'm Daniel Kasahun with this edition of Addis Dialogue. In this edition, we spend time with the top figures from the Diaspora Trust Fund. Here with me are Chairperson of the Advisory Committee, the Treasurer, and Chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Trust Fund to deal with major issues about the Diaspora Trust Fund, its achievements, challenges, and the way forward. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First, you introduce yourself for us, please.
Okay, quick self-introduction. My name is Alamayo Gabramare, but I'm popularly known as Professor Al or Professor Al Mariam. I have a rather substantial presence online, so that's how most people know me. I'm a professor of political science, and currently emeritus professor, and I'm also an attorney at law, practiced criminal defense for criminal defense and civil litigation for the last 27 years. I'm chairman of the Ethiopian Diaspora Trust.
Okay, Dafu Yusuf Dafu is a well-known personality.
Well, my name is Zafu Yesuswek Zafu. My capacity this afternoon is as the chairperson of the board-led local NGO, the Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund.
And next, Dr. Bisrat, the Treasurer.
Thank you. Bisrat Aklilu. I have been with the United Nations for quite some years, I would say 30 plus years. I left in 2013. In the UN, I've been having different positions. The one probably the most relevant to the Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund is in 2004, I established the UN Multi-Partner Trust Fund Office that manages various types of trust funds in development, reconstruction, recovery, peace building, and climate change. And in the last few years, I've been involved in various boards, but the most prominent again being my involvement in the Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund, both as advisory council member and treasurer.
How do you remind us the formation of this trust fund?
Well, the trust fund, of course, is the brainchild, without any question, of the Prime Minister. Prime Minister came along and he said, challenge the Ethiopian diaspora outside. This is a time to come and help your needy, disadvantaged brothers and sisters. And for those of us who listen to that, and two magic things that he said. Number one, just $1 a day. He could have asked $1,000, but no, he asked for $1, which means it's affordable to anyone to participate, Secondly, it's a way of re-engaging the diaspora in Ethiopia's development. So these two magical things, the engagement, the affordability, and also then saying, we have nothing to do with this. It's not a government initiative. Your initiative, the diaspora, get together, develop it. The advisory council was formed. Professor Al, he said, he's the chairman. Those of us who are outside, we started with that, with 17 of us, came up with the terms of reference and so on. Here, of course, in Ethiopia, with the board. So in short, really, a challenge, get it to us. It's for us to work on it, to make it, and if it has problems, it's us who are accountable.
How was the takeoff?
Well, the whole project, as Dr. Bisrat mentioned, was launched as a result of His Excellency Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed's call to the diaspora to join in the country's development and also the transformation that was at the seeding stage at the time. And so we had no practical experience, at least in terms of setting up this kind of grassroots trust fund, although Dr. Bisrat has substantial experience in managing perhaps multi-million, multi-billion-dollar funds and so forth. So there were a lot of challenges. We had really no way of putting together the fund except extraordinary amount of goodwill, determination, passion, and commitment and patriotism, for that matter, and also commitment to be engaged. I want to underscore one fact here. For the longest time, perhaps in my experience, for the last 50 years or so, the diaspora generally has been in adversarial position to any regime of government in Ethiopia. So, and I was one of perhaps the foremost opponents of former regimes and so on. So it was really a sea change in the way the diaspora was going to be engaged, and that's precisely what Dr. Prime Minister Abiy had done. He basically transformed the way we thought about government, we thought about how to get involved back into our country's development and so on. And so from this project transformed us from an opposition force to a more supportive force, not necessarily with any particular government program and so on, but just in terms of creating this synergy of getting a lot of people involved. Just very briefly, we were officially established, I believe it was August 9, 2018. So that was the first day that we basically got together with the advisory council, and then we started mapping out plans. It was really taking steps in the dark, as it were. So what did we do? Well, we started exploring the legal requirements, the compliance requirements in the United States for collecting money and sending it out. That means establishing EDTF, Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund, as a legal entity, incorporating as a non-profit, then meeting banking regulations, dealing with payment processing, because if you're going to collect money. So there's a lot of organizational work that had to be done. And I'm proud to say that we really made history by launching this Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund from abstract concept into an actual project, and we're ready to fund right now in less than 14 months. So we made history, and I'm very proud of that.
Can we mention some of your accomplishments, achievements in figures, Dr. Basrat?
Well, in figures, I mean, number one, in terms of mobilization, how many Ethiopians are involved in this? Currently, close to about 26,000. But that number, I think, is even more significant when you notice that it comes from 93 countries. These are Ethiopians residing. None of us knew each other, by the way. You know, the only thing that united us is vision. So someone living in Guam, someone living in Mozambique, someone living in Norway. I mean, it's just this thing of helping Ethiopians, uniting together, and then working towards this that goes together. So those are things. And then in terms of chapters, that is, these are community Ethiopian groups, you know, of the diaspora that are established. We have about some 46 chapters right now. And in terms of resource, we're close to 6 million. So in 1 year, I mean, as just Professor had mentioned, going through all the legal steps, establishment, so on, and coming with this, I think it's quite significant.
What have you done with the money, the fund that you solicited here in the country? Tell us about the achievements.
It's not something that is going to be measured by the amount of money Ethiopians in diaspora are going to mobilize. That is important, that is concrete. But then, look at the skills diaspora Ethiopians represent in the world. I mean, because in future, having reconnected with the motherland, we believe that more and more Ethiopians in diaspora are going to come and see what is going on in this country, what is happening with the contributions they have made and they continue to make. And some of the contributions, in fact, in the future, may be in the form of not dollars and cents, but skill transfers, knowledge. In other words, every penny, every cent that diaspora Ethiopians contribute will be applied directly to projects that are going to help perhaps those that are most needy in the country, in the area of water, sanitation, health, education, and the creation of employment, which is really a very critical issue in this country. So the board that's been established here is entrusted with making sure that that promise, which is made to all diaspora Ethiopians all over the world, will be implemented honestly, faithfully, and with absolute transparency.
As you mentioned, it cannot be immune from the challenges. Let the chairperson of the advisory committee speak.
There are a number of things that I would like to mention. One of them is, I think, one of the most unique things about the Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund is the fact that its vision is intergenerational. We didn't start this thing, as you can see, we're all very young people, probably not much older than 29. But the idea is that once we establish the basic foundations for the fund, then the younger generation would have to take over. And then that's in the long term. So if you look at EDTF, it's basically a journey, and we're taking the very first steps on a 1,000-mile long journey. So that's one thing I would like people to understand. We're not going to collect another $5 or $20 million and then disappear. This is going to continue. Our grandchildren hopefully will take over that. And in fact, as I often like to say, maybe EDTF will be the vehicle, the mechanism by which we can liberate Ethiopia, and perhaps arguably Ethiopia, if we're able to sell the idea to the rest of Africa, liberate the continent from handouts, from being dependent, from being addicted to aid, and somehow recover our dignity. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing that we're talking about. But this is our first year, and people need to understand that. You know, there are a lot of people who mention that there are 2 million Ethiopians or 1 million Ethiopians out there and so on, but you've collected only $5-6 million and so on. What's wrong with the diaspora? Well,
yeah, what things went out of the domain?
Yeah, well, there are a number of things. As I mentioned, when we started this thing, we started as an immediate response to the call of the Prime Minister. So he made that call, and everybody got emotional and involved, because this is there was a lot of pent-up energy. There were not a lot of people who had an opportunity to participate in their country's development, namely myself. I've been away from Ethiopia for the last 50 years, and so when I got that opportunity, we jumped on it and grabbed it. And so we tried to mobilize grassroots support and things of that sort. So if you really look at it, the reason that we're able to achieve what we achieved, and I am very proud of our achievements and so on, yet there's a great deal of work to be done, is that, this is the first step on the 1,000-mile journey, and therefore what people need to judge is that, creating two institutions on two continents, being able to meet all of the legal requirements, maximizing accountability and transparency, making sure that we're supported, for instance, 100% by volunteers. 100% of what we collect goes to projects only. We are 100% free of any governmental or any other external pressures and so on. So this achievement needs to be appreciated in the broader context, and we can get into the details and so forth. But the answer to the question is that we're just starting, and we hope to mobilize the greater diaspora community to get involved, because this is not about supporting a particular government or a particular regime or even a particular model of development and so on. This is a personal contribution. I contributed $1 to Ethiopia, and I now have $1's worth of ownership in the development of Ethiopia. And there are people who've contributed much more than that. And therefore, we want this idea to be inculcated in the minds of people so that they can take ownership of their country. Okay? Yeah. $1 is no big deal. Okay? But ownership, being psychologically connected to your country, being psychologically committed to the development of the country, that's a big deal. And that's what we would like to see with the Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund.
Dr. Basar, can you add some points on it? And if you have made any readjustment to tackle the challenges, can you mention?
Well, challenge perhaps just to add a couple of things. One is the clarity in understanding what Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund is and is not.
There is always this confusion because the Prime Minister initiated it through this challenge that it is necessarily a government vehicle. So it took a lot of effort, it still does, to tell them, no, it's not, this is our fund, this is our operation. It has nothing to do with the government. Even legally, as they explained, both in Ethiopia as well as also in the United States, were established as non-governmental organizations. So that challenge is absolutely right there. I would say the other challenge, of course, for us is, which is what we are so proud of, but is also a major challenge, is we are a voluntary driven entirely organization. You can't really manage this huge enterprise through volunteers only. Initially in the first year, perhaps yes.
There is a lot of enthusiasm. All of us work really on a voluntary capacity, but as you go forward, you've got to have a bit of a permanent structure, So that is another challenge that we've got to upscale it, But first, in order to do that, we have to prove ourselves to others, saying what the resource you have given us, we have put it, in sound, good, impactful projects, as Joseph was saying. So once we do that, hopefully we'll demonstrate to others. The third, I would say, is this expectation issue, that in 1 year we're so proud of what we've done, and absolutely we should be. And what's so telling is it's not us.
Other countries that are watching this, looking at this, saying, incredible, how did you do this in 1 year? I was at a meeting of West Africans, primarily Nigerians, in Houston last July, where they invited me to give kind of a presentation at Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund. In fact, I was telling them again, too soon, too early to share our experience. But nevertheless, they were so amazed that, by that time, probably it was 80 countries where the diaspora contributed. They were telling me, here in the United States, we have difficulty even mobilizing ourselves. You guys are mobilizing people who are way out, how do you do it? So, so with that, of course, comes expectation, a high expectation. In 1 year, where are the projects? What have you done?
So managing expectations also. I think within this, come next year, as we gradually kind of put the projects on the ground, hopefully this will bring in even more of our kind of diaspora colleagues and around the world. I was recently in Sudan, lots of Ethiopians there, certainly very much keen and interested, and I think they will join.
Mr. Zafu, how do you want the Ethiopian diaspora to position itself and in order to help this trust fund?
Well, I think personally, because of my profession as an insurance man, I'm a very optimistic person, and I believe in incrementalism. Look, there wasn't even $1 before this idea was taken up by a few Ethiopians. So
when you started from zero, and unless after organizing and going for the fundraising drive, it's not such a long time. Look at nearly 30,000 Ethiopians all over the world, organized in 46 chapters and making contributions.
$1 a day. It is, for me, a very impressive beginning. Now here in Ethiopia,
we said, okay, what kind of use could this money be put to? And when the first announcement was made and we called for project proposals, initially we were talking about, well, maybe we will receive some 50, 60, all right, let's say 75 project proposals. You'd be surprised. 410 project proposals were received. And what a job had to be done to sift through and come to the shortlisted 22 projects that at least have passed now.
Okay, so let me come to Professor. How confident you are in the trust fund and in the Ethiopian diaspora?
I have real confidence in the diaspora, but we have a lot of teaching to do. We have a lot of public awareness to do and so on. And myself, Dr. Bizat, and many members of the Advisory Council travel to different parts of the world and so on, just teaching and educating people about the purposes and the accomplishment vision and so on. With respect to the fund itself, as I indicated earlier, I have absolute and full confidence in it, because this is not something that failure is not an option for us. By that I mean, if we collected 5 million this year and 3 million next year and so on, it doesn't matter. Our efforts will continue. We're going to build a juggernaut. Nothing's going to stop us.
Right. Dr. Prasad, are you optimistic that the EDTF will be sustainable? Is it laid on firm foundation?
Absolutely, I am. But let me give you let's humanize it and really say, who are these people that are contributing? When we talk about Ethiopian diaspora $1 a day, it just becomes a rather nebulous idea. I'll give you two stories, concrete kind of stories. As a treasurer, of course, I have access to the people that are contributing. I mean, we're asking for $1 a day, but there are a number of Ethiopians who are contributing much more than that.
Mr. Zafo, how do you foresee the future of this trust fund?
With that $1 that they have sacrificed, they are helping, along with others like them, tens of thousands of Ethiopians to improve their lives. I believe this Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund is going to grow, and especially when we demonstrate that those dollars that people have contributed are really going to make a difference in the lives of Ethiopians here at home.
And Dr. Basrat, how do you foresee the future of this EDTF?
Well, just even going beyond Ethiopia, already there are a number of countries that are saying, could you share your experiences on establishing? Just before you came, some gentleman had just come here today, was simply asking us, this EDTF, because I have to prove something to my president. We're going to be meeting with the African Union here. And I said, of course, I was thinking of EDTF, and then I saw this sign. And imagine, it's a bigger country, probably they have much more professionals than, 3 times the size of ours probably outside. So when you see this kind of inspiration from others when we're looking at us, I'm quite confident that, not only will this idea catch up here in a much more wider base, but even in other countries. So we're in a journey. It's good to make it right. We can't just simply rush, but I think this is a journey that I think will involve all of us. And I've got 2 kids, they're not really kids, but they're working. And they say, we really don't see you as excited as you are now in other activities that you've been involved in. You're so excited about this. I said, absolutely. And they are also getting involved, So I think it's a generation thing, and I'm quite positive that it's here to stay.
And finally, Professor, your perspective and your final message.
Well, I think the kinds of questions that you're asking, particularly about our aspirations for the fund and the kinds of things that we should reasonably and realistically expect and so on. What I've noticed, as I said, I've been away for a very long time, and therefore I may have, a slightly distorted picture. But most Ethiopians, especially in the diaspora, are psychologically conditioned to think fatalistically. By that I mean, they think in the negative. They say, well, they started it, it's not going to happen. It's always, we don't have that kind of optimistic drive that says, headlong, let's go, full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes kind of an attitude. We don't have that. We get defeated very easily. And therefore we are always questioning ourselves and our self-confidence. So what I see as job number 1 is sort of an open examination, open exploration, kind of bring the diaspora community into confrontation with this fatalistic reality, this defeatist attitude, where people simply do not commit themselves to saying, we're going to do it. You know, we don't have that can-do attitude. The core people working in the Ethiopian Diaspora Trust Fund, that's all we are. We can do it. That's what we mean. And therefore, if we can convince the majority of the diaspora to develop that kind of can-do attitude, I think the battle will be half won. On the other hand, there are realistic obstacles in the way, although I largely consider them to be bumps in the road, and that is we can't continue this $1 model, even though I want to underscore the fact that 80% of the Ethiopian people live on less than $1 a day. A person working for a factory earns less than $26 a day. So there is the power of the $1, so let's not underestimate that. But it's not just the dollar, but it's when the dollars are put together from 93 countries, from 27,000 people. That is what Madimar is to me. We're now bringing the soul and body and energy of the diaspora to bear upon this one fund. Year for 2 years and so on, it's going to be intergenerational. We're going to pass it on to our children and their children's children and so on. And maybe in 20, 25 years, this will be $1 billion fund. And I see that vision. And my job as chairperson and as leaders of the fund and so on is to show to the world that we've started on a project that's going to be the envy of the world. Okay, I know that. I can see that. You know, of course, translating vision into action is somewhat different, but you know, we've started on a journey, and we're not going to stop. Nothing is going to stop us. We will succeed. This I will assure you.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time and candid explanations.
Thank you.
Well, dear viewers, that's all for the program edition. Many thanks for watching us. See you next time with yet another edition of the program on ETV language. Till then, goodbye.